Hi there all. Hopefully you had yourselves a splendid little Christmas vacation and had a good time of New Year's as well, going out and, well, hopefully not getting sloshed. But partaking in whatever drink you fancy and all that good stuff. But, no, you may be wondering, well, Starshield 9.17's been out for some time. Why are we looking at this? Well, it's a particular thing to it. It has been out for a couple of weeks, but there's one thing a lot of people I know have not taken notice of with the update. It's not the Swedish tanks. No, Jesus, that was everywhere. Because you see those all the time in pubs now. But this, the premium vehicle changes. Now, these have been rebalanced in some of them much more than the others. In sense, Wargaming has, right now, the WZ Focus in the premium shop, as well as a package encompassing 2 of those rebalanced vehicles. I found this going to be much more impetus to get new videos out pertaining to these rebalances. Now, what I'm going to do is 2 things. One, this will be a forward, most likely to the first video, just where I inform everyone, show them that on the site these are listed, because a fair number that I've run across did not know about the majority of these changes. Perhaps for 1 or 2 of the premium tanks, but not the majority. And 2 is, as I'd said, it gives me more reason to start focusing on premium tanks versus what I'd want to do the Swedish tanks, which will eventually happen. But in the first video, because I don't want this to go on too long, is just say, look, if you want to have a go at it on the main page, check out the 917 update, premium vehicles. I've got a list of everything here, and the first one that we're going to be focusing on will be the Revalorise, because this used to be a very niche vehicle, but with all of these buffs that they've done to dispersion, depression, and power to weight ratio, make it a much more all-rounder tank, not a you will be sniping with us, have fun sort of thing. And second of which, I get the feeling will most likely be the low. And there is a match, case in point, that I had blocked nearly 4,000 damage in AT10 against, at the same time, a T57, an M4A1 183, and an IS3. That's a bit stupid. It's a good thing, but a bit ludicrous. Now, with that said, in the next probably 4 videos, 5, I've already done some of these vehicles. We will be focusing on these, and without further ado, since I don't want this video to last a good 30 minutes or so, with a forward tacked onto it, let's get right into the Revalorise portion of this rebalance set of reviews. So, catch you in the garage when we have a look at the crew and the equipment. Okay, so we've got our M4A1 Revalorise, or some of you seem to enjoy calling it the ravioli. But out the gate, I wanted to mention one thing. Going on to the future, just for self-reference for me, a continued format in which I'm going to use is the garage at the beginning of these videos, so I can show you 2 chief things. One, what particular crew I'm using, just so you all get a sense of how it will perform when compared to what crew you may happen to use with this particular tank. Now, this isn't advocating any given skills. Most oftentimes, being a premium tank, the skills that you see listed conform more to the tank that it comes from, not what is necessarily best for the vehicle we'll be looking at. But with that said, I wanted to put it forth, just go over here one at a time so you all can see on the screen what I'm using and how it will reflect versus what crew you will use. And then second of which is what equipment we will be using. And in this case, being a medium with good view range, coded optics, a rammer, because well, it goes without saying, you can use ram, you slap it on there, and overts down. Now, as I said with the crew skills, this isn't necessarily to say this is the best setup. You can pretty much use whatever you want, but this is what I, in this case, chose to run on the vehicle, and typically it will be a reflection of what I normally put on these particular tanks. Now, without further ado, let's see how the Revelry does perform with this crew and this equipment in that replay that I believe it was on Overlord, took this tank out on. So let's pop on over to that. And here we are on Overlord, or as the replays like to call it. I believe it's tacked up as D-Day, but moot point really. Now, as I will be going over in Tanks GG, the buff to the Revelry affords you a modicum of being able to be rather aggressive on this map, and apparently we're going to drive over the bunker, ignoring the fact that it cuts off a bit of speed. It's either new or I completely forgot it was there. Mood point yet again. As I said, we can be a bit aggressive on this map, so we're going to play the middle, but before we get exactly where we want to set up, let's have a look, as we're used to ever so commonly, and shall continue to henceforth, look at Strat Sketch. If I get it the right time. There we go, I'm getting back into the swing of things. Now, this is an older version than I had set up, if some of you may recall by the name, the M4A1 video, but it still holds true. It's just we've got the colours backwards, but it still holds true. Now, since we know most oftentimes when we come up here to the middle ridge, there will typically be a tank over on this corner up top trying to get early shots in mid, TD's back here, a heavy on the low inside, or some little numpty in a light tank, and this happens more often than I can count, that will come up here in the mid to this bunker and think he's safe. God bless his heart. Now, you will notice out on the western side of the map, this big white area that is aptly named Immaterial Fluff. If you go here and you're in a heavy tank, you are putting your gun out of the fight for about a good 2 minutes, which means if the enemy team is any intelligence and they see that there are heavies coming here in mass, you invariably got a tank that's sitting back here trying to snipe up this line. They will be spotted, or from the north, vice versa, up here, tanks pushing up over to D2, and they will mop the floor with the entirety of the rest of your team, push down the 8, the 9, or the 6, and then you're going to be fighting up out of the low ground, which is a bit of a bitch, I must admit. So if you go down here, you either have to push it incredibly quick, hope the team is playing incredibly slowly, and they're just numpties enough to let you win that way. Now, it isn't to say you cannot win this way, but as far as pub play goes, I typically advise people do not do this. With that said, we are actually going to go with one of the heavy tank positions, typically up over here on the F5-6 line, because 2 reasons. One, we've got a high alpha gun, and we've got 10 degrees gun depression, which means we can play this hill incredibly well, as you will see in the first engagement, which I believe is with a D-Day, but low tier aside the point. Now, once we do take command of this, you see this orange zone here and here. It is called danger zone for a reason, because if you do have command of mid, you want to be exceedingly careful about pushing round here from either the north or south respectively, because you're always going to have some git back here in the TD behind the bunker who's only getting late game damage of, good lord, it's been a while since I've done these, speaking is hard. Or as of late, someone sitting all the way back over at A4, or in the case of this replay, multiple people, some of which should not be there. It is a good position, but not one that you want to just sit there steadfast the entirety of the game. And we're not worried about that anyway, because we're playing a medium, so irrelevant faff as far as I'm concerned, at least as far as our gameplay goes. Now, another thing you can do with a heavy is come down here and tee off of this rock. We're not in a heavy, we're not in an avid medium, we're not going to be doing that either. Now, sometimes you can push with a team over here in force out on the 9 line. If you know that the enemy team has 6, 7, 8 people out on the western side, well, you can push this incredibly easy if you've got the people over here. So that can work. But with the sense of this battle, since we've got gun depression, we're not the quickest medium, we've got a couple heavies with us, we're going to try and take command of the middle. And as we go, I will detail how that works. But you always need to bear in mind, TDs will camp on this 4 line, north and south. So just in short, if you garner anything from this, if you go west, you better be booking it, son. Otherwise you're getting your gun out of the fight for far too long. And if you push up here, arguably out on the 3 line, or get yourself into this bowl, you best make certain you have full command of the better half of your map when you decide to extend up into these areas. And even then, you need to be aware of where these bunkers are, which you'll see once we get into the match, so you can get out of the line of these TDs out on the 4 line. But with that said, let's get right back into the match. Kicking it back into gear, as I said, we've got very good gun depression, so we are going to play this ridge. And surprise, surprise, since there usually is a tank here, and a Crombie. We miss him, but this is what I love about this tank, as you're about to see. There is a little hapless Jagdpanzer forward there. We go up, barely let an aim in, and back off. The gun handling on this M4A1 has been buffed significantly, and I love it so. And that poor guy just bounced off of our upper hull. And we've only got about 60mm armor there, so don't expect that to be a consistent thing. Now, we're backing off because we've been spotted twice. Trip's going to come up here and take command of that ridge, and we have an IS here, proxy to Tiger. Now, this isn't something I would usually advise people doing, but I want a good position and only be shot by the Tiger P and not the TDs behind, and just book it immediately across so I can come up over here and use my gun depression once again instead of being caught jackstick to the wind. And you remember that position I mentioned? Yeah, that's a medium tank. That's an FV422, but a medium tank nonetheless. You probably don't want to be sitting back there, you know, have the best camo. And look at this. Another relative snapshot into that Tiger P's turret. If any of you played this tank prior to 9.17, you will know the woes of trying to snapshot in this thing. Now that ISU 122S is a bit backed off, so we made certain he was there. We're going to be going a bit forwards, seeing if we have any shots. Now we don't, because that Proto is well enough behind that building, so we're going to back off. And it's a darn good thing we did, because Mr. ISU 122S over there tried to just pop a shot into our side. So typically, as I said, you don't want to push around this. Those KB5s do have the interest, so we're going to come over here a bit further to the left so the ISU doesn't have clean shots on us, and we're going to try and get that Proto from shooting into these KB5s. But as you can see, still well enough behind the building. And we've got a little 30-02 in the way to get some easy damage off of. Feel a bit bad, but damage is damage, and there's no point trying to shoot the Proto in the face. And if I recall, yeah, we whiff anyway. So, now the Proto's there, we don't want to dick around with him. ISU's behind his little rock. We're not going to be going beach line, so I say bump it. We're finally going to go over here and contest these tanks that went on the 2-3 line and stalled out. As I said in Starshield, you don't do this. Just do yourselves a favour and don't do this, because you can get in this little cubby hole, and even if you don't have any gun depression, you can get your gun down over here and penalise people that do, nearly regardless of what position they take. Now, admittedly, I get a bit bored here, because I know the map is going to be wrapping up, and I want me some damage, so this is a don't follow my example here. Oh, balls, and off we jump. Do as I say, not as I do. Just go around here and shoot them in the face. Unless you want to be stupid and you get bored like me, then go nuts. But I'm hoping with this match, since this is wrapping up, with what little time I had, this is essentially how this tank would play. I found that with its better gun handling and better gun depression and better mobility, you can get around the map fairly well. You can take much more aggressive positions if there is varied terrain, that you can make use of this thing's gun depression now. And it's a much more fun tank. Before, I must admit, as with a lot of people that I know had played it, it was forced pretty much into the sniping role. It had bad horsepower per ton, close to what the FV402 has, and it was hard to not do anything but sit in the back and try and cover as many fire lanes as you could and just outright snipe. I don't know, I rather enjoy it. I mean, hilarity aside in this match, which I by all rights should have died hopping off of that cliff, so that was the stroke of luck on that. Yeah, I'm hoping this stresses to all of you how mobile it is and how it can be played. It doesn't have to be sitting in the back as an outright sniper. And I believe this will be the last shot of the game, so we're going to have a quick look at the after battle, and then tanks GG after that. So off to what replays we go. Righto, looking briefly over at what replays. Now that was a, let's see here, nearly 3100 damage match. This was the best terrain that the Revelry can see, mind you. As you notice, there were some 2.6s in this, but I wanted to go over the fact that when I had played it in the past, and hopefully in the upcoming days I'll have more time, whenever I took this thing and got into, say, a tier 9, damage was still consistent between 1600, 2200. At tier 10 you'll have a few problems, as you would with most tier 8 mediums in that case, just because regardless of your armor, it's not going to be enough for the tier 10. The penetration is enough to deal with anything that is relatively on the side, or if the turret is turned, but you don't want to be shooting things from the front. In a tier 8 match, you could pretty much just go with reckless abandon and be petting any heavy tank in the front you wish. I mean, it's 200 pen APCR, so little issue. Tier 9 match, somewhat a bit different. You may need to load up some heat to shoot an E75 and the lower glacis, but anything outside of outright hardened targets that don't have a noticeable weak spot on the front, that you need 220 or less pen to go through, you're not going to be needing to load up that much heat. And as you may have noticed in the replay, I believe it was 48 in 3, or something similar to that I had loaded on the Revelry. You're really not going to need that much heat. So, in a tier 8 match especially, credit income, it's going to be really decent. I haven't played premiums in a while. I'd be lying if I said I haven't been spending my time elsewhere, in this case with shooting boats, and the scaling of credit earning is vastly different from tanks. But I do recall that for 3000 damage, around 90k income is not shabby at all. So if you're worried about credit income, this thing does just fine, let alone the fact you've got a high alpha gun that even if you're getting 3 shots off, in all likelihood you're going to be getting 60k in your pocket with a premium account. So now, going over this, let's go look at the specific stats on this tank so you can get a better feel, not just seeing how it performs within the match, but the hard stats on it, and see if those are to your liking. So let's go ahead and go right over to Tank CG and have a look at that. Okay, now let's have a quicker than usual view at this, otherwise I fear this picture is probably going to be good. 30 minutes long, and I don't believe anyone wants to slog through all of that. So, just quickly, Patton Kia FE422. I want to compare it to these two tanks because, one, they are two chief vehicles that most will probably be weighing getting against the Revelry. Now, the Revelry plays a bit more like the 422, the Patton Kia I just wanted to put in because it's, for better or worse, the closest analog of a Tier 8 premium medium tank that you can get. But, going right into the stats, we've got a very good DPM at 1900. It is more than the KR and the 422, and this is doubly significant because you're rocking a 390 Alpha gun. And that doesn't happen too often where you've got better DPM and better Alpha, so this is exceptional having the two. Now, the 200 pen gun is a bit misleading. It's already very good for a Tier 8 medium, but it's doubly so because you're rocking APCR for the stock ammo. And because of that, you get the 2 degrees normalization, so that's going to feel a bit more along the lines of 210 pen, perhaps more than that, and a very high shell velocity. So what does this mean? It can make for a very good sniper, but at the same time you can afford to be aggressive now because you've got the DPM, the gun handling, as we will see, the gun depression and the DPM. Now, getting onto the weapon handling, this is one of the reasons why many people I've run across, myself included, did not like the Revelry before. It had enough dispersion on hull and turret traverse to make it irksome at .18, and now it's got a bit better in accuracy, make it even better at sniping. It has a better aim time at 2.4 compared to the other 2.8, and gun depression. This thing now has the same gun depression as the Patton KR and the FE422. This means you can play this tank on several other locations that you couldn't before on any given map. That's awesome. You've got a top speed of 40. You're not going to really be taking early positions because you do have weak armor on it, but just to say it's mobile, but not necessarily mobile enough to take key positions in the beginning. But you do have a better words the hard dear lord. You have a better horsepower per ton. I was about to say power per weight per ton, but I suppose that wouldn't be incorrect. But no, it is much better than the 422, which is why I think the 422 is still fairly kneecapped, because it does go 40 now, but we'll look at that in its respective video. It is quicker than the 422. This is good. It has a respectable horsepower per ton for a medium tank, especially high alpha damage medium tank. Train resistance, par for the course. We're going to ignore the 422s because that's a ludicrous stat that they gave it in order to a vain attempt in order to buff this thing to being respectable. Right, back on track. Enough ragging on the 422. The armor, as I'd stated, it's squishy, you cannot depend on it, but because it does have good gun depression now, and it already has a rather small turret on it, you'd be surprised at how hard it is to hit at range whilst poking a ridge and getting that gun down so you don't have its fat body in the way. It's just a small turret, so it mitigates that issue a bit with the buff to the gun depression that it received, but just to say, don't expect to be bouncing any shots off of it. 1400 hit points, par for the course. It's not really that low. I think the average is anywhere from 14 to 1450, so you're good there. Engine HP, rather model HP overall, it's good except for the engine, but I don't think I've ever had the engine knocked out on this, so that to me is a bit misleading, having a low engine HP stat. Now going on to the view range, it's what you'd expect out of a Tier 8 medium, arguably a bit better than what you'd expect. So at 390, you're probably going to be tossing coded optics on this to spot for yourself, to stress a sniping role if you so choose to make use of on this vehicle, which it is good at, with the, like I'd mentioned, with the very good shell velocity, with the APCR. You've got the camo on it. I don't believe it's all that much better than most Tier 8 mediums, because this is still balked and takes GG for whatever reason, but it's I believe on par with American mediums, but you're going to be stressing view range as it is. Just to say, you may not be relying on camo all that much, not nearly as much as you would with, say, Russian medium. Now, the engine fire chance, low compared to the two others that we're looking at, the Pack AR and the 422, but as I said with the engine, I don't think I've had it knocked out. So, icing on the cake, really. Now, it's a moot point, but I just wanted to show this to stress the fact. You have under 60mm effective on the front, the turret, even with the gun down, aiming up into it, 120, 150 to 170 on the mantlet. You need to bear in mind the fact that Tier 6 vehicles, which is probably the weakest you're going to see with this thing, actually it just is, with the matchmaking it gets, we'll be able to go through that, because even Tier 6 medium tanks have anywhere from 140, and the heavies have anywhere between 160 170 pound, with a few exceptions, so they're going to be going through you. But if, as you saw in the replay, you try and stress gun depression, you present the smallest silhouette you possibly can, that's your best bet. So you're not going to be relying on the armor, and if you're questioning where to shoot this thing, shoot it anyway. You won't have problems. But no, going on as I always do at the tail end of these, as a summation for, dear lord, that looks like an acid trip of a tank. As a summation on it, for any of you that have played this tank before, and you did not like it, because the gun handling, going back and looking at that actually quick, it used to be to where it was right about irksome at 0.18. That's what I find irksome. And you did not like the Revelry before, just because the aim time felt a bit too long. The dispersion was a bit too bad. I think you may want to come have a look at it again. It's enough to where you could be snapshotting targets. The gun depression tethered to the mobility makes it much more usable than it used to be. And for any of you that haven't played the tank before, if you're looking for, if I can get the right bloody model that I'm looking at, looking for a tank, medium tank rather, that plays like a sniper, I hate to admit, this is very adept at that. If you're looking at a medium tank that you could pretty much run a close support role to heavies, especially since this thing has the penetration and the alpha to be making very good trades at close range, running shotgun to a push. This is your tank. It is squishy, but just the fact that you've got good DPM for medium, good alpha and good pen for medium, I think it's a very multi-role tank that it didn't used to be able to facilitate, because now it has good gun handling, everything you need to be making snapshots at close to medium ranges. It's much more comfortable in that regard now, which you saw in the replay, which is why chiefly I wanted to show this thing first out of all the rebalanced tanks. But I must stress, if you are somebody that wants a medium tank with a modicum of armor on it, even if it's just against 2, 6 or 7 vehicles, this probably isn't the tank for you. If you're looking for a tank that's quick enough to be taking advanced positions, like on mines, getting up into the center of the map, or on Kabanovka, getting up to the hill, you may not like this thing, but everything else that we've looked at, I believe, has either been addressed with the changes to the vehicle, or was already good, and is now even better due to the stats that they've given it. So, bearing in mind what you've seen in the footage today, aside from the shenanigans I pulled at the tail end, hopefully you guys decide to either have a look at this when it's one of those rental periods that they come out with, or have a go at the tank, spend a bit of your Christmas bad money. Well, I just dated the video again, but it might be worth having a look at. But with that said, because I know I've drawn this video out probably, hopefully, not 30 minutes like I have been lately. Hopefully you found this entertaining, if not informative, and on the next video we'll be looking at some more of these other 2-rate premiums that have been rebalanced, so you all do take care in the meantime.